Hi, third graders. You just finished watching A Chair for My Mother by Vera B. Williams. And the reason I had you listen to that story was, number one, it's a great example of a personal narrative. Hopefully, you were able to pick out a lot of information that told you it was a personal narrative. But the other reason was because I wanted to show you how writers do this thing in their story sometimes where they actually jump backwards in time to remember the events. So they're thinking about the past. And if you remember in this story, right, they have a fire and they have to move. So right when we find out that they're lucky that they get to move, see if I can find it right on this page. Right? She says, it's lucky we're young and can start over. On the very next page with that big jar of coins, look what it says. That was last year. But we still have no sofa and no big chairs. When Mama comes home, her feet hurt. So the fire was last year, right? She's showing us how a lot of time has passed and she's thinking back to that time. I don't know about you, but if you've ever anticipated a trip, right, and you're waiting, or maybe you're saving money for something special, the time that passes, all that anticipation can build up, and showing your writer that, or your reader that, can make your story a lot stronger. So I wanted to show you at the very beginning of my story. Remember, I started with my lead, and I'm not going to go back and reread all of this today, but right here, when we planned our trip to Maine with friends 6 months earlier, the one thing on my wish list was learning to paddleboard, right? I'm kind of telling you, we had planned that trip for 6 months. I want to show you, right? Even at the time of the story, 6 months before that, we were planning and thinking and getting excited and anticipating. Okay, so remember, here's my first paragraph. I know that because there's an indent. Here's my second paragraph with another two-finger indent. Here's my transition phrase. First of all, I want to show you how I added to my story. Remember at the end, I couldn't let Rhonda down because it was her vacation too. Here's my next paragraph. Look at that. There's another two-finger indent. Then it was time. The parking lot was dusty and the gravel crunched. Can you hear that crunching? Under my feet as I walked. I remember thinking, oh, look at that. I underlined that in highlighter. I remember thinking, I'm going back into the past, right? I remember thinking how heavy the paddleboard was because when I entered the water, I was relieved to put it down. I climbed on the board and sat on my knees. I spent the next 30 minutes in this position, practicing my paddling and turning skills. How will I ever stand up? The rubber grips on the board were digging into my knees, and the pain was distracting me. At last, Chris showed us how to stand up, and as I followed his direction, I began wobbling. Remember, if I think back to my Plot Mountain, I'm getting towards the top. It took a while to regain my balance. My body was tense and I was shaking. Doubt crept back into my mind. But then I realized I was doing it. I was actually standing. So I took a deep breath to steady myself, and all the nerves melted away. Okay, take that deep breath. Let all those nerves melt away. And all of a sudden, I realized I'm actually doing it. Right? That's that turning point in my story. I'm at the tip top of my mountain, and I'm able to recognize, hey, I can do this. I don't need to be afraid. So remember, as we look back at my Plot Mountain, talking about my excitement, my nerves. Ooh, I shared a little bit how I was fearful, right? I wondered if I could back out. Oh my goodness. Now, here I am. I'm doing it. I'm actually doing it. Right? I need to tell something in there about how proud I am of myself. So I'm going to have to go back into my story and add those emotions of being proud. I also want to show you something I did in my last couple of paragraphs. I changed some things when I went back and reread it, because a good reader or good writers do that all the time, right? They don't just write and then their story's done. They go back and they fix it up. We call that revising. So as you reread it, maybe the next day, you notice, oh, I could change this up. One thing I like to do is add adjectives. Those are those describing words. I also like to change words. So take some very plain, ordinary words out. And I like to call them salsa words, something that's a little spicier. So here's what I did. At first, I wrote a sentence that said, "It was a nice summer day and sunshine filled the sky." Well, that's a good sentence. But look what I did. Nice is a word first graders and second graders can use, right? Third graders need to think of some better words. I came up with the word glorious. So what means something describing like that summer day? It was a nice day. But if it's a glorious day, that's one of the best days ever, right? And then sunshine filled the sky, but the sky could look like anything. It could be full of clouds, it could be gray, right? I decided it was going to be a blue sky, right? Because it was a very beautiful, bright blue sky day. So I started by putting the word blue. And then I realized, oh, it was more than blue. It was like really vibrant and really bright. So I added the word bright blue sky instead. Now you'll notice I've been skipping lines because I want to go have room to go back and add things to my story. So I wonder, let's look at my paragraph that I wrote today. I'm going to reread that to you, and I wonder if you can help me find a spot where I might be able to revise it, to make it better. Only you, as the writer, can revise your stories because it's your story. You were the one that was there. So what could you write that could make it a little bit better? Right? Remember I said, then it was time, the parking lot was dusty, and the gravel crunched under my feet as I walked. I bet you can hear that, the crunching of the gravel, right? I'm looking for some spots in here. I climbed on the board. It was hard. I spent the next 30 minutes, the next half an hour on my knees, right? It was really difficult. So the rubber grips on the board were digging into my knees, and the pain was distracting me. So the rubber grips on the board, right? That remember on my organizer that I showed you the other day, using my senses, I wrote something about feeling like sandpaper, right? Because that's what those grips felt like on my knees. It felt like sandpaper. So I wonder if I could show my reader that instead of telling them that. So the rubber grips on the board were digging into my knees. Oh, could I write like sandpaper? Does that give you a better idea of what it might feel like? And the pain was distracting me. Right? Chris showed us how to stand up. I began wobbling. Wobbling like what? I wonder what I could add there. Wobbling. Oh, have you ever seen a new baby wobble? A baby who's learning to walk? I bet I could add that. I began wobbling like a baby learning to walk. Does that give you a better idea of what my wobbles looked like? I wasn't very steady, right? It was really hard to stand because I was going back and forth. So I want to show you what it was like, not just tell you I was wobbling. My body was tense and I was shaking. Okay, have you ever been shaking from something, right? Have you ever run a race and your legs are kind of shaky because you're so tired at the end? Wonder if I could add that. My body was tense and I was shaking, as if I had just run a long race. I was shaking like I had run a race. So that tells you, you can probably, you either experienced it and you know what that's like, right? Or you can picture it in your mind. My legs were really tight and I was really tense and I was shaking. There's that doubt crept back into my mind, right? I was standing, took a deep breath to steady myself, and the nerves melted away. How could I add that feeling? Remember that proud feeling? I was excited. I realized I was doing it. What could I say to myself? was actually standing, so I took a deep breath to steady myself, and all the nerves melted away. I had never been so proud of myself. Or maybe I hadn't been so proud of myself in a long time, right? Because there's lots of other times I was proud of myself, but I didn't know if I could do it. And I did. Your job today is to continue writing your story. And I'm hoping you can go back and revise. You can change your writing and make it better. Remember, only you can do that as the writer. And I wonder if you can add something in your story where you go backwards in time, where you're remembering something. Okay, see if you can do that. And if you would like to watch A Chair for My Mother again so you can catch that spot, feel free to do that. And remember, you can always pause this video and go back as much as you need.